So today I have two wonderful people who will introduce themselves to you and they talk about the things they do. They're very well known in Australia. Some of you might know who they actually are. So welcome, Michelle.
Well, why don't you start first? Peter Goes, the founder and COO of CMC, also Combined Management Consultants.
Yeah, so thanks, Judith. I was working as a developer back in 1978, and by the time we got to 1980, had noticed that there was a real lack of project management around ERP projects. Everybody was writing bits of software, but nobody was actually doing the coordination to get it properly implemented. And so I set up CMC in 1980. A number of talented individuals that I knew joined us, and we started helping people implement all kinds of business systems, from bespoke systems developed for Telstra through to manufacturing and warehousing systems for other clients. So it all started by the fact that it seemed to be a gap in the market, and it seemed like we were in a very good position to address that gap.
And that's amazing, right? So it's over 40 years back, and you've spotted a need for effective management of whatever we choose to do. So it is beautiful. The need hasn't changed, and you've continued to serve the community.
It's just as busy as ever.
Yes.
That's a blessing, isn't it, Peter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Michelle, what about you?
Well, my background was high school teaching, and I joined CMC 23 years ago as essentially business development to see if we could grow our client base. It was coming off the back of Y2K, and the need for business systems evaluation, project management, strategic IT consulting had really not changed, and still hasn't changed today. There is still a lot of opportunity out there for independent consultants. So we've developed a methodology, and we've got a great team of people around us. So that's what I've been doing. And then about 3 years ago, Peter said, I think you should become the CEO. And of course, I was very humbled. Didn't think I had enough skills to do that, but he seemed to have my back and voted for that. So Peter moved into a COO role, and I moved into a CEO role. So we both have very defined roles within the business, but they do collaborate and weave in very well together. So a bit of personal history is after being together for 24 years, we were married in April this year. So we thought that timing was pretty much perfect. So we proved we could work together, so we thought we should therefore get married.
And this is amazing. So in our community, there are a lot of people who do business together, like couples, non-couples, like we know each other quite well. And it is definitely a small but a growing community, and the relationships run deep, as you say. So it is, you've served, and especially you have served the community for over 2 decades and maybe 4 decades. So what's the what's something that keeps you going?
You go first.
Well, I think what keeps us going is that we have a very egalitarian kind of company. So the financial side is majority of it goes to the consultants. So it works very well for everybody. And what I love is that we can make a very large difference to our clients. And when you look in the current landscape, Judith, and you look at the firms and the other consulting companies, nearly everybody is so focused on optimizing revenue that sometimes the clients get a pretty bad deal out of it. We like to think that we're there to try and protect the clients from getting that sort of bad deal and getting them the outcomes they need. And there's a burning need for that for people who have got nothing no axe to grind, no biases, no commissions or kickbacks. It works very well, and the client testimonials sometimes bring us to tears. They're so moving. But a lot of them have been losing sleep for years until we bowl along, and it all seems easy to me, but it seems very difficult to them.
Oh, yeah. It is, isn't it?
And I think that, we've got, I would say 70 or 80% of our business is mostly in manufacturing, supply chain, warehouse management, but all of the business systems that touch that. So it's not just ERP or CRM, but it's also payroll. And as I said, warehouse management, sales and operations planning. The thing that I think what happens with some of these organizations, which are, under, say, $1 billion, so up to, say, 900 million in revenue, is that there are so many, I should say, vendors on the market that they have a presentation from vendor A, they then have a presentation from vendor B, they then have a presentation from vendor C, then they go back to A, and it's like they're playing what I call vendor tennis. And so it does become a bit of a washing machine for them to try and understand. So should we go with SAP or NetSuite or IFS or Infor or Epicor or Cispro or Oracle? I hope I haven't left anybody out there. Microsoft.
Microsoft are notable as actually.
Microsoft. Just thinking off the top of my head, no offense to any of the vendors out there. And so what we find is that all they need is just a pragmatic and auditable process, and they just don't have a process. So we think we bring along something that's very pragmatic and just gives them a step-by-step approach so that they can then go to the market, do their assessment, and we facilitate. We don't vote, we don't recommend, but we give them all the tools they need to help them on that journey. Yeah.
And there's a lot of satisfaction in that when you see how long some of these clients have been struggling with, decrepit ancient systems. They just don't know how to start. So to answer your question, why do we like doing this? To make a difference.
Yeah.
And that is beautiful, right? So one thing that you both said that touched my heart is the value of independence. So the independent advice is what the world's looking for, be it in the small and medium segment or even in the very large segment. So someone who is independent, who is not loaded with any agenda, who looks at them, gives them tools so the client can make the decision that is relevant for them or that is right for them. So thank you for what you do. And it is something which is close to my heart, and I appreciate it. So yeah. And about your company, so you've worked on a lot of products and you've also worked with very different types of clients. So what's your market like?
Well, it's quite broad in terms of the vertical market. So it can go from retail, e-commerce, as I mentioned earlier, supply chain. We do a lot of work in manufacturing and supply chain, and that's primarily because that's probably Peter's background, and he essentially runs all of our consultants and our consulting practice. But we also do a lot of work in the very large not-for-profits, and we've also done some work for government. We probably, what we haven't done a lot of work in is probably the large, the big four banks and the big four insurance companies. They typically tend to gravitate towards the firms, and so we're probably in that next tier down, if that makes sense. Yeah.
And
I think currently our client, if you said what do our current client profile look like, we've got somebody who deals with precious metals making medical devices. We've got someone who's a large church organisation doing HR and payroll. We've got people who are manufacturing all around the world of packaging. We've got all kinds of marketing companies, fruit and vegetable marketing companies. So the range is never the same. I mean, it's a constant changing landscape, but the problem is usually the same. And we're getting a lot of clients, Judith, right now who are in that sort of 50 million and sub 50 million, who have bought composable architecture where they bought Xero and they bought something else and Shopify. And then they get to the problem of how do we deal with our supply chain and manufacturing? What do we have to do to connect that up to something that can be the beating heart of the business? And there's not a lot of people who are interested in discussing that with them, because the composable market's full of people who are not getting big license fees and big revenues. So it's a bit of a do-it-yourself kind of market. And so for someone like me to walk in, I'm qualified in network and hardware and infrastructure. I've been a developer for 25, 30 years. I understand what the solution architecture world looks like. Sometimes the assignments are just quite small and compact, where we come in and look at this collection of pieces and say, well, these are the elements that would then complete that picture, and they can choose to get us to help them, or they can choose to do it themselves. But that small end of the market where everybody's being lured in by composable architecture is a minefield for those who then find that they need the heart of the system and don't have one. The spreadsheets and all kinds of...
Oh, the spreadsheet.
Oh, yeah.
Michelle's fond of saying the world's biggest ERP is Excel, and we see it every day.
Oh, yeah. I totally agree with you, right? And what is very impressive is that you both make a huge difference in that landscape, especially the small and medium, who are lured into this composable ERP, and most of them choose based on cost reasons. And then, they definitely need help to make it work, and that's where you guys come in and fix the whole thing. And as you said, it puts a smile on everyone's face at the end, and you see real life changes.
Yeah.
That's good. So,
well, an example is that we were working with a large dairy related organisation, and there were 3 separate business units who were all running their area of the business on Excel spreadsheets with macros that were literally over 20 years old, and they had no visibility of master data. And so everybody in the different areas, whether it was in finance or ordering and QA or down on the factory floor, had their spreadsheets. And so, you can ask a simple question like, so what happens when somebody's referring to a product and you're all using a different product code? Oh, we just let them know, so it relies on a human walking to another human's desk and telling them that they've updated something so that they should update their spreadsheet as well. Otherwise, it's not going to all keep in line, So there's huge opportunity for efficiencies and reducing that duplication of work and data entry error. So, I don't think that's going to stop for a while, actually.
Yeah. I think it's a big opportunity as well as a big learning curve, right? So whichever perspective we want to look at it. So for a lot of organizations, they don't recognize this as a problem, because it's like for 20 years, macros ran the place, and human interactions, when everything changed, ran the place. And why not for the another 20 years? Well, the world has changed, and we need to be very mindful on the cost and the impact on people it's causing. So, yeah. And you guys are making a huge difference, and you've identified that niche where you play to make that difference, especially for rural Australia. So I've heard the lovely stories that you told me about Tasmania and other rural places where you made an impact. So thank you. Yes.
Well, there's a lot of large family businesses in rural and regional Australia, multi-generational family businesses, maybe 4 and sometimes even 5 generations. Not that the 5 are in the business, but probably will be. And they need as much help, because you don't get the big end of town wanting to go out into those regional areas.
Yeah,
Yes.
and
Schools are a good example, Judith. So
Yeah.
a few years ago, we were engaged by the New South Wales government in partnership with the Association of Independent Schools to go into schools and look at what was their landscape and their architecture, and what were the needs for personalised learning for our students to get the best outcome. And so we ended up doing, I did one about 4 weeks ago in Queensland, but we ended up doing over 115 of these assignments, which were short and sharp, and gave them a roadmap for how to, in some schools it might be the Wi-Fi was rubbish, or in some schools it might be their school management system or their learning management system was poor, or their sports and academic attendance was poor, and so risk was high. So we've done, 115 or so of those, and in each case, the school has adopted our recommendations and then taken them for themselves to go and implement, because these are not consulting assignments. These are not assignments anyone wants to do, because it's all brains. It's about a week and a half's work. And then you're putting a picture in place for, what in some schools, 3,500 children will be affected by the kind of recommendations we make. And my background at the start of my career was maths and science teacher. And so that whole domain, which nobody really knows that about CMC, because it's like a little hidden piece, it's been a very large piece in terms of effort, not so much in terms of revenue, but in terms of effort.
Yeah, and also outcomes and contribution to the community, right? So it's the future Australians who are the real beneficiaries of what you do, especially when you talk about schools, and it's the teachers and the parents and the and the children. Being a mother of a 6-year-old, I do get it, like how much all these small things matter, and people like you matter. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for your
You probably had to face the problem of bring your own device theories and all that sort of stuff
Yeah,
with your children. Yes. Well,
yeah.
we put those in place for schools.
There you go. Yeah, this is great. And talking about the work you do, right? So you do a lot of work that makes a difference in the community, especially for the schools and other things. And going out to regional Australia and talking to clients who otherwise wouldn't get picked by any of the big ones in town. So you have a very working niche that you've worked it out, and also it keeps the country running, and it's beautiful. It is, I would say, a model that anyone can copy and want to expand if they want to. But you have pioneered it. So as Lee, and on behalf of the community, first of all, thank you. And now it comes down to, how can the future leaders who are inspired by your story contact you?
Well, I would say if we're looking at, you've got your baby boomers, and then you've got your Gen X, and then you've got your millennials, and now we've got the Gen Ys. I think that the millennials and the Gen Ys have so much intelligence, and they've got so many tools. They've been educated with game theory, and they've grown up with digital. And so I think that they do have a lot to contribute. The thing that they probably perhaps at times underestimate about themselves is that sometimes you just need time and you need experience. So the thing that the baby boomers and the Gen Xers have is they've got experience, okay? They've had decades of experience. And I'm not just talking about operational experience working in the trenches of industry, but I'm also referring to, how do you deal with humans? How do you have helpful conversations? How do you lean in and have useful conversations? Because it's one thing to be educated at school and then come out of university and think you know a lot about everything, AI and technology and application of technology to solve problems. There's still a communication element and a communication layer about how to deal with people. Because in all of these projects, okay, they don't usually, if there is a project going off the rails, they don't usually fail because they chose the wrong solution. It's normally because the people in the project are resisting the change, or they don't feel like they're being heard, or their roles and responsibilities are changing. And so I think there is an aspect of that needs to be considered when we do these large multi-year projects as well. Yeah.
You've got to bring them along on the journey, and it's so easy to see them as, uncooperative or background people, but they're the future. We have to bring them along. So we go into a client site, and our offer is, we might say, we'll do a piece of work and it might be X dollars. However, if you've got any people in the company, and we will help you write job descriptions that we can mentor, that might be X divided by 2, and you end up with a resource in the business that then has some of that knowledge and some of the templates and processes to be able to do that for themselves. As soon as you get these youngsters into that mold, they flourish.
Oh, yeah. And I would say, first of all, thank you for this. And people like me have found careers in what we do because of somebody trusted us, somebody mentored us, and somebody entrusted us to believe that we can solve problems. And I think that's what we as humans can do to each other and to those coming up. Like, they're far equipped for this world than us in many cases. Like, I firmly believe in this. Like, we are all raised for different times, and young people are raised for a different times. So I could see that in my daughter. I could see that in my nephews. You can see that in people, absolutely.
Yes.
So we're all serving our own, those we intend to serve. So made a very good point. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And in project teams, we find if the people who are the stakeholders, both the senior leadership team and also, the business process owners or the people doing the training, if people can leave their egos at the door and contribute, what we find is it doesn't matter where the great idea comes from. Let's just take the great idea and put it into the melting pot of how to make this project a better experience for everybody.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it comes from the business owner who might be in their 80s or early 90s in a large patriarchal family business historically, or whether it's just somebody who's come out of university or who has been brought up in the business, who's in the warehouse or on the factory floor, who might say, I've got a better way of doing this. Why don't we look at this? So it's about, being open and listening to others' views as well.
And ideas can come from anywhere, right? So that's the beauty of ideas. So that's good.
Yeah.
And now to the most interesting part of the conversation. So how can clients reach out to you?
Oh, they can find me.
Judith, I would say that one thing that I've noticed is that we have never had to do the opposite, which is we've never had to advertise or apart from Michelle's very active profile in LinkedIn and also in CEO groups, we don't have any kind of advertising. People have heard of us and call us. And I think often it's because they've just run out of people to call that made any kind of sense. So they can reach out to us easily by Michelle's remarkable presence.
We are combined management consultants. There's a lot of CMCs, right? So there's the Country Music Channel, there's Consolidated Metals Corporation, there's a CMC restaurant in Darling Harbour. There's a whole lot of CMC. So look for combined management consultants and you'll find us.
Absolutely. And one thing common about the ERP community and people that I'm interviewing is that most of us, clients reach out to us. That's the most interesting thing. And also, as a community, we are there to support each other. So if you would like to pick Michelle and Peter's brains, absolutely. And they're very kind people. So audience listening to this, please reach out to Michelle and Peter. And if you are a client with a very interesting problem that no one wants to take it up, Michelle and Peter are your people.